She's a doctor. I mean, not like a medical doctor. Please don't ask me for any medical advice. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to my channel. That feels crazy to say. Welcome back because this is my second video. I had a video come out last week. If you missed it, you can go back and check that out. I had so much fun making it. I'm so glad. The people that watched it said they liked it. If you watched it and you're back for more, so glad that you're here. I plan on posting videos every other Friday. I can promise books and I can promise chaos. That's kind of what you're gonna get basically all the time with me. So stick around if that sounds fun. Subscribe if you want to see what we get up to next. But today, the purpose is to tell you about the book that I'm currently reading. Well, I've been reading this book for weeks, but the next book that I'm hoping to finish up. So the book is this chunker, Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell. I'm going to have to talk fast because it legitimately kind of hurts my hand and my wrist to hold this book up for this long. It is 850 pages. I am on page 666. I'm enjoying the book. I'm really liking it, but 3 weeks is a long time to be reading anything. I don't want to be reading this book for longer than a month. That seems plenty long enough. I am also excited about finishing the book though, because once I finish this, then it means I will be officially done with my 15 and 25 reading challenge that I set for myself. Most people do a 25 and 25. That seemed a lot to me in January. Just this year, I've really kind of slowly been getting back into the type of reading where I set challenges and I set TBRs and things like that. I spent about 4 years as an exclusively mood reader while I was finishing up my doctorate degree because I didn't have brain space for anything else. But that's done. I'm free. She's a doctor. I mean, not like a medical doctor. Please don't ask me for any medical advice. A piano doctor, if you will. I wasn't sure if I was even going to get through the 15 books on my list, but smashed it. Again, this is the last one on the list I need to finish. So, what is this book about, you may ask? It's a great question. I've been asking myself the same question for the last 666 pages. First, I should say this book and I have history. I tried reading this book back in 2017. It was not the book for me at that time. I was not this sort of reader then, and I read almost half of it and then just couldn't do it anymore and gave up. It had stayed on my radar as something that I would maybe like to try again, but who knows when or if I would have gotten to it if not for the sweetest, most delightful, beautiful man named Piranesi. You thought I was going to talk about somebody real, weren't you? No, I'm talking about Piranesi. Honestly, he's real to me. The author of this book, Susanna Clark, wrote another book several years back called Piranesi. I read it last year. It was not only probably my favorite book of the year, but probably my favorite book of the last 5 years. I'm obsessed with that book. I just thought I have to give her another chance. This is the only other novel that Susanna Clark has published. And then I found a copy of this book for I think $2 or something at a thrift store, and it kind of just seemed meant to be. As far as what this book is about, you'll hear it called a fantasy, and sure, it is. There's magic, there's fairies, these kind of fantastical events. I would say that the book is much more grounded in its setting, which is 1810s Europe. Napoleon and the Napoleonic Wars are a pretty big plot point of the first half or so of the book. Layered alongside her atmospheric settings, there's this other world existing alongside that, this kind of shadow dimension. Mr. Norrell, he decides to take on as a pupil Jonathan Strange, and the two of them work alongside one another to further the cause of English magic and to help the English defeat Napoleon. After the war, there becomes this ideological shift where the differences in the way the two men conceive of magic and think magic should be handled and studied, that crack between the two becomes very apparent, and there is a division. The point where I am in the book now, about 2/3, a little over, probably more like 3/4 of the way through, we are trying to learn who's going to be victorious in this battle of the ideologies. Is it going to be Mr. Norrell with his conservative, stuck in the text sort of approach, or is it going to be Jonathan Strange, who's much more interested in pushing the boundaries and discovering what really could be done and enlisting maybe the help of fairies, who are generally considered to be very dangerous and devious creatures? What's up with the history of this fellow known as the Raven King, who was doing crazy magic in England maybe 500 years or so before? So these are the questions that we're figuring out. But I've rambled long enough trying to even just give you any semblance of a synopsis, an idea of what this book is about. So I think I'm going to save any of my own personal thoughts about the book for later. I will be back when I have some updates, but I am going to get some pages in tonight. Hopefully be back to update you tomorrow. Okay, a few quick updates. I'm at page 755, so I'm under the 100 page to go mark. I will definitely finish this book tomorrow, and then you will get my full review. In the meantime, I finished another book, my poetry collection that I was reading this month, volume 2 of the new and selected poems of Mary Oliver. Mary Oliver writes a lot about rest and stillness and finding rest and stillness from nature, kind of releasing yourself from the hurry and the busyness that the world seems to want from you. This is from the poem Patience. I used to hurry everywhere and leaped over the running creeks. There wasn't time enough for all the wonderful things I could think of to do in a single day. Patience comes to the bones before it takes root in the heart as another good idea. Another theme that I really picked up on in this collection specifically is this idea of embracing mystery, being okay with not knowing, releasing our need for answers and for certainty, and just submitting to life and to the world. So, this is from her poem Turns. The years to come, this is a promise, will grant you ample time to try the difficult steps in the empire of thought where you seek for the shining proofs you think you must have. But nothing you understand will be sweeter or more binding than this deepest affinity between your eyes and the world. The flock of birds thickens over the roiling salt brightness. Listen, maybe such devotion in which one holds the world in the clasp of attention isn't the perfect prayer, but it must be close, for the sorrow whose name is doubt is thus subdued, and not through the weaponry of reason, but of pure submission. Tell me, what else could beauty be for? I will always be a Mary Oliver fangirl. This was a great collection. If you want to start with just a single collection of her poetry, not a new and selected like this, House of Light is probably my favorite of hers. It's a great place to start. Always happy to recommend Mary Oliver, talk about Mary Oliver. This is a 5-star collection easily. I loved it so much. Oh my gosh. I mean, it was kind of slightly dark outside when I started filming 7 minutes ago, and now it is completely dark. Forgot it is wintertime, and that's how it goes around here. So I'm going to wrap up for the night. Take it easy, and we will be back tomorrow to finish Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell. come to you a victorious woman. I have completed Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell, which means I have completed my 15 and 25. Let's talk about this book. So, first of all, I made an attempt at a synopsis when I started filming this vlog. From my memory of it, I don't really think it made a lot of sense. So, I'm going to use somebody else's synopsis and read it to you because it's a lot better, and then maybe you'll have a better idea of what this book is actually about. This is from a blog called Bastian Balthazar Books. Thank you so much, Bastian Balthazar, for your work. At the start of the 19th century, British magic is in decline. It is strictly a theoretical science with no practical application. Two magicians aim to reverse all of that, to revive the ancient art of English practical magic. These two magicians are Mr. Norrell, a paranoid eccentric, and Jonathan Strange, an adventurous younger man. Mr. Norrell brings his magical abilities to public attention and proposes to help out in the war against Napoleon. And so their adventures begin. That's everything I was trying to say the other day. The only thing I would add to that synopsis to help you understand where the book goes in the second half is that when Mr. Norrell steps out and starts doing magic publicly in an attempt to get the British government and people to take him and magic seriously, he performs a pretty exceptional act of magic, and in doing so, kicks off a series of events that continues to have ramifications and consequences all the way up until the last page of the book. So let me tell you first what I loved about this book. I loved the setting. Susanna Clarke writes setting so well. It's so atmospheric, it's so beautifully described. She does a great job at creating a world and then inviting you as the reader into it. This book, like I previously said, is very much a historical fiction. It's very grounded. The way she layers magic on top of that is just so enchanting. I found a quote from her on that same blog. She said, I tried to make that, I think meaning just the setting, the world, as accurate as I can, a sort of blend to ground the magic. I find that magic becomes more believable when you put it next to something which is quite mundane and quite ordinary. That perfectly describes the setting of this book. One of my favorite settings that she explores is Venice. There's a section towards the last third or so of the book where one of the characters spends a pretty good amount of time in Venice, and the way that she describes this city as kind of dreary and moody and atmospheric, it already draws you in, and then you add magic on top of it. It suggests that the city somehow has its own magic. It reminds me a lot of how Sarah Perry chose to describe the city of Prague in her book Melmoth. It just gives the city almost a sense of being a character because the atmosphere is so strong. And it also suggests, in the case of Venice in this book, that magic is closer at hand than we would think, that there are these places in the world where the barrier between worlds is thinner than we could imagine. He walked away and became one of the many black figures on the piazza, all with black faces and no expressions, hurrying across the face of moon-colored Venice. The moon itself was set among great architectural clouds, so that there appeared to be another moonlit city in the sky, whose grandeur rivaled Venice, and whose great palaces and streets were crumbling and falling into ruins, as if some spirit in a whimsical mood had set it there to mock the other's slow decline. Are you kidding me? So good. It's so good. Another thing I really enjoyed about this book is that it was difficult to read, which may seem like a weird thing to say, but let me explain. It is set up very much like a scholarly read. It's kind of this pseudo scholarly read. There's footnotes, there's historical references, and it just required a very slow pace. It required a very close reading. And I'm not always in the mood for that type of book, but I was right now. I'm thankful I picked it up at, I think, the exact right time and mood for me to enjoy that sort of experience. She does not make it easy on you. Like, there's so much description, and important plot information or character information will just kind of be buried in the middle of a paragraph or the middle of a line of dialogue, or heaven forbid, in a footnote. So you just have to pay attention kind of all the time. And that forces you to slow down. And I found that to be a really enjoyable experience. So, as far as the things I didn't love, I will say the pacing and the length were a little bit of an issue for me. I liked that it was slow, but I didn't love that it was uneven. The middle 400 pages of this book kind of dragged, and then the last 200 pages just took off. and I'm glad there was a climactic ending. I liked what was happening. I thought it was exciting, but it did feel a little odd after how slow the rest of the book had been. Generally, I think that she could have trimmed 200-ish pages from this, and it would have been, if not a better book, at least a better experience for the reader. You wouldn't have had to wade through quite so much. There were a lot of anecdotes or side characters or funny little stories or funny footnotes. While I generally enjoyed those and I thought they contributed overall to the atmosphere of the book, there didn't need to be quite so many. And I think that the story would have been a little clearer to the reader. Maybe I wouldn't have such a hard time talking about and explaining this book if she had just been a little more to the point and a little more direct. I will also say, not necessarily something that I didn't like, but something I want to bring up is that this is an overwhelmingly male book, specifically white men. There is one black male character who is pretty important to the story. He's actually probably my favorite character. He had one of my favorite arcs. And through this character, she does very convincingly explore the attitudes and thoughts of England around race and slavery during this time. And so I was happy that she brought that up and was willing to discuss that in the book. There are also women characters in the book, and sometimes important plot points are revolving around these women, but they're there kind of as props in the men's story. The way they were written, it made me feel like Susanna Clark was aware of this. I wouldn't say, oh, this is a super anti feminist book or anything. She made the female characters, at least one of them, pretty self aware that she, in fact, was there as a side character in these great men stories. But all that being said, if you want a book with a really strong female character, this is probably not the one for you. Overall, the reason, again, I was so interested in reading this book was because of how much I loved Piranesi. And at first, I was feeling like, wow, these books have nothing in common. They could not be more different. But as I read, I began to see some really common themes. The idea of a labyrinth, which is pretty central to Piranesi, shows up a lot in Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell. And this idea of thin places, these liminal spaces, or these thin barriers between worlds, that shows up a lot here. There was actually a cool quote I wanted to read you. He looked around in confusion. He did not appear to be dreaming. All the old familiar objects were there: the shelves of books, the mirror, the ink pot, the fire irons, the porcelain figure of Martin Pale. But his confidence in his own senses was shaken. He no longer trusted that the books, the mirrors, the porcelain figure were really there. It was as if everything he could see was simply a skin that he could tear with one fingernail and find the cold, desolate landscape behind it. She's such a good writer. So, overall, if I were to give a rating, I think I'm sitting at 4.5. I think, as far as my experience with it, it's probably a 4. But as far as just the quality of the book and the quality of the writing, everything that went into the enormity of what this is, I would want to give it a 5. So that's why I still use 0.5 stars, is for this exact kind of instance. It's not quite a 5, but it's better than a 4. So that's where I'm going to land. As far as recommending it, it often is talked about with this kind of comp to Jane Austen, which might seem kind of silly, but it is a slow book with clever writing set in the early 1800s. If that's part of what you like about Jane Austen, then maybe you would enjoy this. Do not expect romance from this book. You will not get it. If you enjoy Gothic literature, if you enjoy slower paced classics, then I think this would be a great book for you. There's actually 2 contemporary series that I want to mention, not as a one-for-one comp, like if you love this, you'll love this, but I was noticing similarities to these series as I was reading this and wanted to just point them out in case you're interested. So one is the Emily Wilde's series. Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies is the first book. This is by Heather Fawcett, and I would put money on Heather Fawcett having read Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell. This idea of a historical setting where magic exists in the real world, where it's a scholarly pursuit, where there's this clever writing that's kind of making fun of the main characters and also making fun of society and academia. Totally the vibe of Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell, and definitely the vibe of Emily Wilde. The other series I want to mention, this is another, again, historical fantasy series, this time set in medieval Russia. It is the Winter Night trilogy. The first book is The Bear and the Nightingale. It's by Catherine Arden. And there's actually 2 big similarities I see here. The first is that both books, or both authors, I guess, are choosing this historical setting with its politics and its cultural conflicts and layering magic on top of that as kind of an alternate history or a way of exploring more. Okay, what is happening politically during this time? Why don't we use magic and fantasy to examine that further? The other similarity is that in the Winter Night trilogy, magic is very rooted to folklore and therefore tied to the land. Magic is quite literally rooted in the earth and in the physical land in this country of Russia. Those themes actually start to pop up in Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell a little unexpectedly, but I loved that part of it. It becomes apparent that magic and England, like the English soil itself, are very closely tied together, and that real power and real magic comes out of a connection to the earth. So, all that being said, hopefully, I have been able to edit my thoughts into something coherent that, if not convinces you to read the book, because I don't think this book is for everybody, at least gives you an idea of what it was about and how I felt about it. So, again, crossing Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell off of my list. Very, very happy I've read this. Really enjoyed my time with it. And like I said, finishes up my 15 and 25 list, which I want to now switch over to telling you about that and talking about that. But for that, we will need a change of scenery. So, to the floor. Okay, sorry, I said to the floor, but I think I lied because I couldn't figure out the camera angle to save my life. We're just gonna do it on my desk. So I have here the 15 books in my 15 and 25 list. I am going to make my life very difficult by forcing myself to pick a favorite out of this list, and not only pick a favorite, but put them all in order from 1 down to 15. So, should we just jump in? I don't even know. Okay, let's just start. So, first, I have the whole Mistborn trilogy. Wow, what a place to start. Okay, well, these actually, I can't start here because these are pretty easy for me to put in order. The first book is my favorite, followed by the third, and then the second. So there's the first three actually in order already. This is the Mistborn trilogy by Brandon Sanderson. It's a high fantasy series. Totally recommend. I had a great time with these books this year. So there's 1, 2, and 3. Okay, next I have Parable of the Sower by Octavia Butler. This is like dystopian sci-fi. Ooh, okay, I'm gonna put her here for now, but I feel like those could potentially switch. Sira by Maria Dueñas. This is the sequel to The Time in Between, which is like one of my just favorite books ever. Unfortunately, the sequel, it wasn't a bad book. I just didn't like what she did to my beloved character. So it was like, I think it was a 3 or something, definitely putting that towards the bottom. Homeland by Barbara Kingsolver. This is a collection of short stories. Good writing from her, but just not my favorite of her books. We'll put it here for now. Another Babs, The Lacuna. This book is so good. It's definitely going near the top. This is historical fiction in maybe 1930s to 1970s or something like that. US and Mexico. Frida Kahlo is a very prominent character in this book. So interesting the way she reimagines her. Wow, Hero of Ages is kind of staying up there. This is unexpected. Next, we have A Fortune for Your Disaster by Hanif Abdurraqib. This is a collection of his poetry. He's another one of my just favorite all-time writers. I love his prose more than I love his poetry. So I liked this, but it wasn't a standout. Next, we have The Secret History by Donna Tartt, much beloved, the progenitor of the dark academia genre. Unfortunately, I read If We Were Villains first, and I loved If We Were Villains so much that in contrast, this book felt a little flat. But I think I still gave it 4 stars. Where's she gonna go? She's gonna go behind Parable of the Sower for sure. Actually, I think I'm gonna switch Parable ahead of The Well of Ascension. Yeah, I don't know why I thought this was going to be a good idea. Okay, next we have, this was a reread, Emma by Jane Austen. Literally one of my favorite books ever. It almost feels unfair to even put it in this list, but I think it's probably going to have to go ahead of Mistborn. Another 5-star read from this year. Now this was my favorite Barbara Kingsolver I read this year, Prodigal Summer. So good. I do think I'm going to put it behind the first Mistborn book though. I know it seems crazy that the first book in a trilogy would just be so high up, but this is probably one of the best first books in a series I've ever read. And if you've read it, you'll probably know what I'm talking about. There is a twist at the end that is insane. Just like mind-boggling. Jaw dropped. Another Jane Austen, I read Sanditon and Other Stories this year. This is basically a collection that has her 2 unfinished fragments, Sanditon and the Watsons, as well as the novella Lady Susan. I really enjoyed this. It's funny to rate a novella and 2 unfinished fragments of work so highly, but I had a great time with it. And I did end up watching the Sanditon show. Freaking out. So good. Actually, I'm going to put it right in this little hole created in front of Sita. Oh, okay. Braiding Sweetgrass by Robin Wall Kimmerer. I read this book in January and it has remained like near the very top of my list. It's one of my favorite things I've read all year. Kimmerer is a scientist and an indigenous woman, and she reconciles those 2 parts of her identity and talks about a way of thinking about and interacting with nature that actually respects the earth and has us be good citizens of the planet that we live on. And those topics are really important to me. Really enjoyed this. I think I'm gonna put her at number 3. Okay, next we have the Piano and Chamber Ensemble. No, we don't. We have Babel. This is the only book that I had on Kindle. I didn't own this book, so I taped a Michael's receipt on the front of the Piano and Chamber Ensemble. I did not finish this book. I'm afraid she's going to have to go here at the very end because this was the only book out of the 15 that I DNF'd. I don't want to say it just wasn't for me because by all accounts, this book was written for me. I love linguistics. I love academia. I just didn't like the plot. I didn't think it was good. I was bored. So unfortunately, she is going to go at the end because it was a DNF. And then the only one we have left to place is Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell, which is going to go behind the Lacuna, but ahead of Parable of the Sower. Let me review. She's basically the same. I switched the Lacuna to be ahead of the Hero of Ages because I remembered that the end of this book was like a 4.5, but the book overall was maybe more of a 4. It's staying ahead of Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell because I wept like a baby at the end of this book. I think about the end of this book all the time. So it definitely still needed to be high up, but I think overall I'm pretty happy with this list. I think I picked like some really good books. I'm looking forward to the books I've picked for this coming year. I am going to do a 26 and 26. I will tell you about those picks pretty soon. I think I have a video planned for January where I'm gonna introduce those and talk about some of my other reading plans for 2026. Hopefully it is just as much of a good year as this one is. I'm so excited that I found some new favorites, reread some old favorites, made it through things that have been on my list for a really long time. So I think that might be it for this video, and I think that might be it for the year. Yeah, the next time you'll see me will be the first Friday in January in 2026. I hope you all have a lovely holiday season. Happy New Year. Happy reading, and I will see you in the new year.